Rogers TV. The following program was provided by a valued member of our local community. Rogers TV is proud to support local producers and share local voices, ideas, and opinions. For more information, please visit our website. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new set, the new updated, technologically advanced NV Polypod here on June 11th.
June 12th,
June
actually.
12th, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
2025.
Day late and a dollar short, as Grampy would have said.
That's what we're dealing with here. And we're live from Menaquist here in St. John, New Brunswick, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy, and Wolastoq peoples.
Indeed.
The grand meeting place. So yeah, thank you for joining us this week. We're back again in a more, situated scene.
We've got tablets, we've got
microphones.
Fred LaForge made some critical insights about our last
Oh yeah,
podcast. Which, apologies to everybody who listens to this all the time, and especially apologies to those of you who pay to support us.
Mm-hmm.
We were on the fly and we were like, we got to get a podcast in. We were looking for a place and looking for another place, and so
it was 5 a.m.
We're at the airport. We might as well do something, and so we threw it together, and we didn't have our mics on us. But now, upgraded mics.
Yes, and we have a ring light,
Indeed.
and we have a desk.
Yeah, we do. I built this one.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we're gonna just basically kind of do a mishmash episode, I think, this week to catch people up. Shout out to a gentleman who came up to us when we were out at the new Reversing Falls restaurant.
Yes.
Who said hello and that you watch on Rogers, which is very sweet, and we appreciate that.
Yeah.
We never know who's watching.
I will say this about Rogers TV. There are way more of you that watch Channel 10. So some history from Charlotte County, if anybody's listening from Charlotte County. Back when I was a young lad, a wee lad, my old man used to do TV bingo, Channel 10.
Oh, yes.
And for 10 years, I remember getting drug around as a 6-year-old to whatever I was. Maybe it was 4. It was like 4 to 14, somewhere in that era. I remember getting drugged to Andy's up there in Blacks, and also, Beatrix is just choking on a little piece of pasta. She's eager to shove a lot in her mouth, so I don't know if I'll bother showing her.
No,
She's literally covered in pasta.
Let's just take a quick break here. Actually, you continue the story.
Yeah. Sure. God, it's like it turns into story time with Brent half the time.
It does, but that's okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so I remember getting drug around to Andy's and AJ's Convenience, if anybody remembers that, on the Blacks Harbor Road. Also to the Fresh Mart and to a couple places in St. George and the Milk Mart in Penfield and the Esso in Penfield to pick up these bingo cards. And so Dad would go and bring them to the Lions Club in Penfield, and he would get on the Channel 10. And so somebody said this to me the other day, because it reminded me when Joe was talking about this man coming up to us. I forget your name, sir. If you're watching, I apologize. And said, "Oh, I see you on the Channel 10." They said that to me, and it reminded me. And so I said, "Okay, it's now a second generation Harris that's been known as seeing you on Channel 10." So strange reality. Never thought I'd say that I would be on Channel 10 like my old man was, but for a completely different purpose, which brings us back to the politics. So I'm going to, I think Joe's come back here. You got her mic right here. Look,
Yes, we had her eating just close by. Don't worry.
Yeah.
She was not too far away, but yes. What's going on this week?
Well, we've got the government of New Brunswick. This is the one I was trying to find, but the government of New Brunswick is getting some increased approval ratings these days.
Okay.
So
I know there's a lot going on with in the national stage with Susan Holt and Doug Ford. And
yes. So this is where I wanted to start. Like I was on the way. Oh, sorry. I kicked the camera, everybody. Sorry about that. I was on the way home from work one day, and I listened to the first David Cochran podcast.
Yes.
Not the National. My gosh, Power Politics. Yes, thank you. So David Cochran was on there and he said, oh, we're going to interview Susan Holt, of course, after he interviewed Doug Ford. And so I was like, this is interesting. She's managed to get herself in front of a spotlight ahead of Tim Houston in many regards.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Houston recently overtook her, I think, because he announced some interesting projects around renewable energy and grid connection to Quebec and stuff. But Susan's doing very good on the national level. And so David Cochran interviewed her. And she talked about St. John projects and the potential around those projects. And
We talked about Sims Corner.
Sims Corner,
Yeah.
which of course a major throughway, major highway through the city that is provincial road that moves a ton of cars and a ton of trains, and it's in the middle of the city, and it comes from the port, and the port's massively expanded. But that, not just that, there was Courtney Bay projects on Bayside. There was port improvements overall. I did see that Dominic LeBlanc came out and said the port may not qualify for a national level project. But I thought she did a good job at articulating where New Brunswick could be on the national conversation around projects that are coming. She held herself well. She connected with what Tim Houston was saying. So they've formed a little bit of an interesting community between Doug Ford, Tim Houston, Susan Holt, as well as Wab Canoe.
Yeah, that seems to be then there's the sort of, I think David Eby be in there as well.
David Eby's was in there, but he's gone a little more
BC,
a little more BC centric lately, and he's cast some shade on the pipeline projects.
I know we talked about this a little bit last time, but there is that cascading effect, I think, of what these interprovincial tariffs are going to mean to each other and how these relationships are going to break down, because it does seem like it is a very sunshiny state that everyone's in, and except for poor Danielle Smith in Alberta, where I'm witnessed a video today where she was swarmed at a rally, basically around a coal mine in the Rockies. So folks do not want that to happen, and she had a event she was at where a lot of people showed up. So anyway, there's lots going on in the country that is
questionable
and connects to New Brunswick in many ways, because Energy East and all these harebrained ideas.
Energy East keeps getting mentioned, but it's taken much less. I've seen it just dip off.
The nuclear conversations.
I know, now there's nuclear thrown in that batch. Of course, the second point of the pro.
Yeah.
Which would be huge for the province, right? To have some sort of leadership in nuclear. And when you think about, there's a bit of a coherent vision I can see happening here around energy sovereignty, actually.
Yes.
So, and energy production, making it so cheap that the States has no choice but to buy it because they don't have some of our strategic advantages. So the grid currently is not connected to Ontario.
No.
And so one of the things you're seeing Tim Houston talk about is this massive offshore wind project.
Yes.
Producing a ton of energy, and then talking about the project, how it needs to connect through New Brunswick to get to that Quebec Hydro, which is Quebec Hydro has likely got the most sophisticated grid system in the country.
Yes.
And so if we're going to move power around, efficiently, it has to go through Quebec corridor and down into the States, which is just huge. But now Susan's putting nuclear on the table.
Yeah, which I think we expected. I was glad to see it wasn't SMRs and instead of expansion of LaPro, because
Second reactor.
Yeah, I mean, it's tried and true technology. Regular nuclear reactors, the small modular ones, I think, are just a little too soon.
I think more and more these days, SMRs are being pitched as a remote power generation solution.
Not a main, energy corridor project.
Yeah, no. They're of course more decentralized and small, but modular nuclear. But they now that people are talking about them, if we're going to extract minerals from the Ring of Fire, who we have to circle back to, the mayor of Timmins, the queen of the Ring of Fire, as we nicknamed her. At we got an interview lined up with her. But if that's going to be an initiative for us, we're going to have power in really remote places.
Yeah.
So that's I guess SMRs are now functional, but I don't know. I still see the Moltex headquarters.
Still see the sign out there.
I'm not sure what's going on. We're just doing a bit of a smorgasbord, trying to play catch up on what's been happening in the province. The two stories that got my attention was the Premier's approval rating has jumped. The approval rating's jumped to 60% from
60%.
54. Yep. And then the other one.
Who does that? You're all about the folks who poll? Like, is this a reputable source that we're getting this information from?
It's.
How do they do that?
Let's see here.
How does one rate a premier?
Well, that's usually the Angus Reid. Yep, there it is. According to Angus Reid. Angus Reid does a quarterly, what do you think of the premiers
Yes.
Thing, and they do it every year, and the Prime Minister. So they poll the entire country. This is like Angus Reid's like big claim to fame for polling is this
This one.
leadership review
okay.
and like asking more detailed questions about how each province's people look at their leader on different topics. So anyway, besides that, so that was obviously about her approval rating. They linked it to like different trade war realities that they were.
Well, there's another one here.
So many
I
tough
thought
ones.
I read a little bit about earlier. The Auditor General flagging public housing and legal aid issues.
That was literally my second one. There's 2 stories, and that was my second one.
Of course it was. So give us your what flagged that for you?
Well, for God's sakes, ever since Dorothy Shepherd was the Minister of Social Development, we've been seeing articles come out from the CBC about how many empty social housing, public housing units there are. And we knew at one point in St. John that there were enough housing units empty in St. John to house everybody who was on a certain segment of the by names list.
Right.
Beatrix, you are wanting to crawl away here.
She's getting really mobile, and it's gonna be a problem.
Nah,
Let's take a little pause here. 1 second.
I'm not sure how you pause it on that.
Me neither. Maybe we're not taking pause. Maybe it's story time for me. Okay. So yeah. Anyway, this Auditor General report flagging this outdated eligibility criteria for legal aid, maintenance issues, and deficiencies in public housing, putting vulnerable residents at risk. Yes, this is something I think we've also come across at council as well, or as councilors, because oftentimes people will equate the city having public housing with, oh, I have a problem with my public housing, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's actually the province that is your landlord, and it's kind of convoluted with, there's other nonprofit housing, and St. John Housing is also an organization. So we see how frustrated some of the clients of NB Housing, I think, have been when it comes to the condition of their homes and their ability to get maintenance to figure things out.
100%. And the boulevards here in St. John, but there's tons of public housing areas that are highly populated, like they're more ghettoized would be the term that we used to use, but they moved away from that model of building them on top of each other. But those spaces, exactly, you can see it, right? You just drive by some of these big buildings that were all built around the same time, but this one's occupied, this one's not, this one's occupied, this one's not, this one's not.
And some of them are like townhouses.
Yeah.
And would be pretty decent units for folks to occupy and are meant for families. Like, we live around quite a bit of different types of public housing.
We do.
And some of them are, rehabilitated different houses. And some of them look like, just a 3-plex or a 4-plex kind of thing. So not bad at all. I wish we hadn't divested our way out of housing, but that's why this exists, why this Auditor General's report exists, because we have defunded housing for decades and have not been sufficient, even maintenance, I think, funds for
well,
there.
they laid off so many people for so long that it was bound to happen. But some of us in the community have been raising the flag about that for a while and trying to get people to think about it. Like, instead of announcing skyscrapers, we really should be talking about how many units we're bringing online. And there is no faster way to bring units online than to go after these abandoned ones and these ones that are just in need of renos. Just like we talked about last week. It's so much easier to hire someone like me who can do a small little teen reno, and than it is to go out and find somebody who can build a building from scratch or any level of complexity in between. So it's a bit bizarre. They announced, remember Dorothy Shepherd announced
$100 million.
Was it 100 million?
Yes, it was. I believe so.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but it was there was an amount of that was supposed to go into repairs.
I forget.
It's like 10 million or
at least.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was spent quickly.
Well, maybe. I mean, let's see the results.
Right.
Like, they don't report on it. They don't say this $100,000 got you this.
No.
So I don't know what the result of that was, but that was 4 years ago.
It was 2021, 2022.
Yeah, at least 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Dorothy and Arlene were here announcing it.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, the saga continues. Then be housing. No more comment for today on that. Too many irons in the fire here with them. I can't.
Yes,
I can't
no,
throw
I
them
think
under
we
the bus.
just we absolutely tread lightly as things settle in. You know, we were told in various capacities. Same thing with federal housing folks. It's like
Yeah.
people need to hire their team. Yeah.
Also, I think we should get into some of the national stuff. But I did see also the province got some attention for spending $6.5 million to keep paramedics and EMT graduates in MV. So less hemorrhaging of the workforce that we're training to take jobs.
I know that there was the nurses top up.
Sorry,
This sounds similar,
mhm.
which I think, you know, it's like credit where
Feeding
credit's due. They're
babies.
going to have to make up for lost time.
Oh, yeah, so
and hopefully
hemorrhaging the workforce.
barges
Hemorrhaging
forward,
the
as
workforce,
they
yeah.
say.
This is the one that I was wondering about, right? Like when they got talking about, oh, we're not going to balance the budget and we're going to spend this money, but we're still going to lose services because the budget needs to be bigger. Like when the province was making that transition in their communications 6 months ago, I was like, what is going to suffer for them? Like they're going to honor these commitments even though they know they can't afford it, and so they're going in the deficit just to kind of keep pace with the minimal amounts of change that they talked about. So they're going to have to take money from somewhere, and I'm wondering if it's, you know, is it the pedal side of things?
Yeah.
Is it? It's not healthcare, obviously. That's where they're spending more.
No, I don't know what's going to happen in the next round of budgetary, you know, concerns, because that seems like it's the deficits are coming, you know, and then everyone's going to be, I told you so. They could never balance a budget if they, you know.
No, we couldn't.
Hit them in the forehead.
No, we couldn't. Not without taxing people more,
No.
or certain people more.
I wonder who those could be.
We've never talked about that on this show.
Tax the rich.
Do...
Yeah, we actually we do have a guest that we're lining up who is doing some great content again on TikTok.
Yes.
These TikTok folks are so interesting. Matthew Flaherty, and you can look him up on there. He's doing a lot of breaking down of like who are Canada's billionaires, how much and why are they so rich?
Yeah.
How do they sort of compare, and what do they do, and what will they leave? That was the one that really drew me.
Will they leave? Yeah,
Will they
that
leave?
was. You know, we've been talking about that since we watched that Louisiana documentary.
Yeah.
But yeah, his analysis seems to be that God, no, they would never leave. They would never incur the expenses and abandon the workforce that they have, the cost to try to replace that workforce somewhere else. And so, like, the best they could ever hope to do would be like a slow downgrading of their operations. But, you know,
again, and his point is they want to make more money. It's like, you go to the gas pump and gas is $10 more this week. Do you sell your truck? Do you leave the country?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing. It's like, no, you just
find a way to get by with $10 and you get mad about
you
it.
go online and you get mad, and you call the newspaper and you get mad and say you're going to go to the Bahamas. So like, that's what you do, and it's not real. And we've been sort of tricked for.
Well, I like how Mr. Flaherty, I can't wait to talk to him, to be honest.
Yeah.
I like how he dives into here's the examples of them not doing that.
Yes.
They, you know, when these companies were largely started, the marginal tax rate was 78%.
Yeah. They
Like,
already lived through this.
So like
through
most
high
of
tax.
these companies that we talk about as being billionaire level companies, short of companies like RIM, which only came about in the 2000s.
Or that guy who's
Like
like a
90s.
Chinese Canadian citizen on the list, the top guy.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah. There's a couple
you're
of
from
videos.
Bitcoin or something. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But for the most part, these people became billionaires because they ran corporations from like the 60s or 70s or 80s from then on. And now they've grown
Or
these
like
empires.
100 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're like, okay, you had a business in the 70s, the marginal tax rate for any corporation was like 70-some%. And we've only ever practiced a, you know, habit of downgrading that to what it is now, which is like what, 22%?
And do we really think that they would have, like, or maybe there was a huge exodus of business at that time, like tons of them closed their doors and were absorbed by these like larger corporations. And
I don't think so.
I know, it's gonna be interesting to go look at that.
Yeah.
Right.
Beatrix is making her presence known tonight.
Sure is.
Yeah, so we still have this ongoing conversation. G7 is coming up.
Yeah, that's it.
India's on the way.
Yeah.
I didn't know this. So like the Sikh community has, and I don't know if it's also Indian. So somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. From our very intelligent, very beautiful, and wonderful supporters, especially you Patreon politicos and Muslim supporters. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Indian community and the Sikh community have a caucus.
Oh, really?
Within the Liberal Party. So the fact that Modi got, which is the Prime Minister of India, Modi got invited, even though, of course, it didn't make as much news here because we don't have such a big Indian or Sikh community.
No.
But they invited Modi, and of course, the last time Justin Trudeau was going after them for basically targeting Canadian citizens, killing 2 Canadian citizens in Canada through the Indian Special Intelligence Team, and thank you, Beatrix, for weighing in on how problematic that is. But it's like, yeah, and so big shift here, and so this gentleman, and I cannot remember his name. He's a representative from out east. Actually, he's west. Sorry, out west. He's from Surrey.
Oh, okay.
It's fun. He is a member from Surrey. I just can't remember his name. One of the 6 ridings, I'm sorry. Anyway, he was like, we're not on side with this. Like, we are not supporting the Prime Minister on inviting Modi here. And so it's sort of the first crack in the armor, like the first shot fired on the Carney cracks. Yeah. Minor, right? Very minor. But
and you have a diverse caucus, folks. So
yeah.
You're going to have people that have no idea what, I don't think many of the East Coasters have.
No, we don't. I
don't. Personal, or the Indian politics, right? Political.
No,
scene.
like the Tamil Tigers and all the terrorism stuff. And there's all kinds of nuance to the, and India is a huge, huge partner of ours, huge place that people have immigrated from India here. And so out west, it's a much broader population, much larger population. So that news doesn't register as cleanly in New Brunswick and the Maritimes overall. And I just thought to bring it up because, it's national, it's made some attention, some cracks in the Carney armor there. And anyway.
Okay, we're back. Bear with us.
Oh,
this
baby
journey of
parenthood.
Yes, it's kind of weird. I also have a burst eardrum. And things are just
if you knew what was happening in our personal lives right now, you'd be like, what in God's name are you two doing here? Why are you on this podcast? We can't stop. We love talking about politics, so we are here for the long haul.
The other thing that happened in St. John this week, actually, we had a cross-border relationship moment.
And some kissing that occurred across borders.
Had some American folks up from, I think they're other governors and
we had Maine, we had the New Hampshire coming.
Yeah, I think so. They were. I saw them all down at the boardwalk walking around.
Yeah, there was
Monday night, and so 6 northeastern U.S. governors attended a meeting in Boston as well. So they're all trying to figure out what to do with this military parade. Actually, can we talk about this horrifying?
Going to 2% GDP?
Oh, I was talking about the absolute shambles the states are in right now and how there's a military parade on Saturday.
Well, that's a different point of the military, the industrial military complex.
Yes.
You'll remember how Eisenhower, basically is considered the founding father of the industrial military complex, kind of not conspiracy, but framework that he worked from. And on his way out of office, he was like, it's haunting. When you go back and listen to Dwight Eisenhower's farewell speech, it is like all he cares to communicate is how dangerous this is.
Yes.
Like the military arms race. So I was going to talk about the fact that Carney is getting to 2% in 5 years faster on military spending.
I know.
And what that means for us and what it probably means the state of the world is in. But also, Gavin Newsom.
Whoa.
That was a Trumpian slip.
That's so mean.
That's
a Trumpian slip.
A Trumpian slip.
Yes. Oh my God.
Gavin Newsom, as Trump calls him.
Oh, poor guy.
Anyway.
They're calling it. They also there's a lot of lefty folks who are on there saying, as much as I like that he stood up to Trump, he still is the Patrick Bateman of politicians. He has this crazy kind of stare.
Yeah.
And he has done a lot of terrible things that not a lot of people have liked as well. But he is very much standing up to the president. But you can also sort of see that he's probably doing it because he wants to be the next president.
You kind of wonder. The girls
Yeah.
are fighting, as AOC said.
Oh my God, the queens.
The girls are fighting when they talk about. So then now it's Trump fighting Elon and Trump fighting Gavin at the same time.
But Elon is apologizing now.
Oh.
Yes, he said sorry. So
Oh.
anyhow, I'm consumed by it honestly because these stories of folks getting, ripped away from their kids and
my
absolutely
at Home Depot and a hospital.
at schools, elementary schools, restaurants, all these places all across the country are being, targeted, and it's just very scary to see like this happening. And it feels like a military parade is just a weird turning point for something like this in a historical sense.
It is. No, it is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely bizarre that we are remilitarizing, celebrating that, and believing that that's the only answer to the problems that are developing geopolitically.
Yeah, like Chicardi said, we can't trust them.
Yeah, and even saying things like cooperation if necessary, but not necessarily cooperation, right? And the idea of like we don't have to play ball with these guys. We're gonna build our own military, and we're gonna have different dance partners. She doesn't care about impending doom.
She doesn't care if we got a new podcast set or a new
She is fine. We, on the other hand, are worried.
Yeah, it really like there's all these miniature things happening provincially. It's like yay EMTs and stuff, and then you're like, well, the whole world might.
Well, Jesus,
blow
are we
up.
going to add 3/4 of the province to Gagetown? Is that what's next? Like, is Gagetown base going to become like going to take over the entire? Like, I mean, if you think about deep port, water access, naval, like whatever, I don't know. They're gonna have to spend a pile of money to get there, right? They're adding like hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure and military spending. And yeah, you can buy big equipment and get there fast. Like if they just were like, well, we'll buy 10 F-35s to replace our F-18s. Sure, that'll add up quick. We'll jump into Golden Dome for $200 million. Like you can start to pile big things on, but
she's in her jelly.
I wonder if she just wants to be as loud as we are.
I've often said that to people because they hear her on here, and that's exactly it. She's like, I literally want to be.
Beatrix, gentle voice.
Again, for the fourth time.
It's going to be a lot of back and forth there between baby Trix.
Yes.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about, we didn't really finish the conversation about Carney's cracks in the armor.
Yeah, well, there is a lot of criticism right now about the military response.
Yeah.
And speeding up that timeline, and that we've just hired another. One comment was he's supposed to protect us from Trump, and stand up to him, not just build a wall, basically. So.
Yeah. No, there's lots of good reasons. Obviously, Canada hasn't been hitting its NATO targets for decades. One of the lowest contributors in the G7 toward our military, and we've just been relying on the States. So, that's the rationale, and trying to appease the orange monkey down south to get him to back off on the trade tariffs, which is.
It feels like 6 conversations ago at this point, though.
Yeah.
Like, he hasn't really brought that up recently.
He just put on new tariffs on steel and aluminum.
Among all this chaos.
In the last 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're just like, okay, well, they balanced their trade deficit.
Yeah.
And they're saying, hey, it works, see? And our trade deficit has exploded. Like, it's terrible. It's way worse. We've got thousands of layoffs. We've got rising unemployment. And so all this chatter about economic revival and economic revitalization and reorganization by Carney and his team, it's like there's a reason they had to go into that type of defensive and offensive at the same time posture. So it's all connected for sure. But you talked about the military parade. I think you're talking about the Donald Trump parade.
Yeah, Donnie's birthday / it's their 250th anniversary.
Yeah.
The military in the U.S. But there's also this counter protest happening called the No Kings protest, which is there's like thousands of them across the country that are happening at the same time. So,
Right.
but he was just on there saying, you know, I'm not a king. Like, I have to do a lot of work to get things approved. Anyways, I don't even know how to watch half of it anymore. Like, it's just,
No.
it's so blatantly, you know, untrue. And
Yeah, and
You're stuck with it.
they're so polarized, and you know, California's at war with the United States government. And the United States government's trying to kneecap Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, the fourth largest economy on the planet. Like, and now they're gonna have what, 100,000 soldiers march past the White House.
yeah, it's basically something that's going to cost about $45 million
Oh my God.
to put on. They've like brought in
Like-
all these tanks.
Yeah, what a
But it's going to
joke.
look like North Korea.
Yeah, it's just gonna look like Russia. It's like this is just like it's a classic. Hey, I'm strong. See, look, kind of play. You're like, well, usually people with real power and real intention to use that power and capacity don't need to show off. They're the quiet ones at the back. They're the, you know, the ones that, yeah, they maybe have some bluster to them, but they also watch their words and don't needlessly choose fights because they're wiser about their power than anyway. It doesn't seem that way.
No, the man turns 79 years old too. So
Oh man,
there's no getting wiser, I think, at this point.
just losing competency.
which Governor Newsom is accusing him of.
Yeah, I heard that too. Like,
Not the same guy he was dealing with 4 years ago.
yeah, serious shade being tossed across the border here.
Sad. Anyway, it's not technically our lane.
It's not the States, or we're not the States, of course, but we are definitely seeing a lot of moving chess pieces.
What's going on with our conservatives? Our,
yes.
you know,
So
homegrown conservatives.
our own native plant of conservatism here in New Brunswick, the Progressive Conservative Party of New Brunswick, is now charging $40 to cast a ballot in the next leadership race. So, of course, this stands in major contrast to the Liberals, who have free memberships, which we will participate in.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been a member of every party at some point.
Yeah, and the Green Party charges $10, but will waive the fee to anybody who can't afford it.
Yeah, I didn't see if there was an accessibility clause. I did see Rene Estefan doubling down on his Facebook post about it, saying, you know, anyone would pay to come to a gala or to like a
But my question is like, again, like you lead to the Trump. It's like, yeah, sure they would come, but it's like, you guys raised more money than anybody.
Why do you need this?
Why do you need the money? Why does the party need the money here? Oh, well, Erica Hashy. Oh, it shows you got skin in the game. Right. It shows, what it does is it pushes some amount of pressure onto people who would consider the party and bolstering the party and joining the party. It pushes pressure on them to walk away, to be like, oh my God, why are they charging me money? I'm not joining. Never mind.
I've been a part of this party for.
Yeah, but the people who have always been there, they'll be like, oh yeah, of course I'm gonna pay the $40.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just like, what does it buy you? Like, you already raised a bunch of money. I don't know if the party was able to spend all the money in the last election. Maybe they were. Maybe they're tapped out broke. Maybe, you know, they've certainly lost. They've certainly lost a lot of members. You know, they're down to 16 members.
In the ledge.
In the ledge, yeah. I was just looking at the article here on the Telegraph Journal. Yeah, 16. They won only 16 seats, and we already talked about the fact 3 of the seats they won were only because the Green Party finished second.
Yeah, right.
And devastated the Liberal vote in those ridings. Or finished close enough behind. So
when
it's
are they
like
planning to actually have this race? Like, are they?
It doesn't say. It's next year.
Okay.
October 2026 is when the leadership race.
So they're giving their membership a real big chance to
engage.
Get organized.
Yeah, I guess. But it's like, who's in the ranks? Glenn Savoy is limp, man. Like, there is no.
I don't think he was planning to run for the leader anyway.
No, but I mean, even still, as an interim leader, like, remember Rhonda Ambrose?
No.
Oh, maybe my point's going to be absolutely destroyed here. My point being, Rhonda Ambrose was an interim leader after O'Toole.
Okay.
Or was it after Scheer? Anyway, she was an interim leader, and she became quite popular, and people were begging her to stay because she did a very good job at navigating the Conservative Party without a leader.
Yeah.
When they were in between leaders, and so I've heard some commentators call it the Rhonda Ambrose effect, where the the interim leader can gain some notoriety by being a fair-minded, sort of good communicator, but we are not seeing that from Glenn Savoy. There's not a lot of passion behind what he's doing.
I haven't even heard too much about the PCs. The only thing I heard about the PCs recently was how Bill Oliver, Bill Hogan, and I believe, I have to look up who the third one was, signed the petition for the Straight Pride Kid shirt.
Right.
And then came back later.
The battle continues.
Bill Oliver did, not Bill Hogan, I don't believe. Came back later and said, I didn't really know what I was signing.
Oh, nice. So they're still a little spooked.
I think that's I don't think that they want to dwell, or at least Bill anyway, Mr. Oliver, the honorable Bill Oliver, doesn't want to get into that discussion again, and seemingly was sort of dodging the issue there, because that was just, that to me is like the rattle cry of some old movement that did not take effect the way that the Barb Dempseys of the province wanted it to.
Not. The
so
like, Versace's.
but that's out in Belle Isle, right? That was out our way, sort of. Unfortunately, but that to me says like they weren't necessarily fired up about it in the first place, even though Bill Hogan was one of the leaders on it.
I know.
He also was kind of limp in his reaction, but I believe, he was all about that.
Oh yeah.
Literally a year ago.
Yep. They ran on it and lost pretty severely.
Yeah.
So it's like, the PCs just seem to not understand who they are right now.
I know.
They don't understand.
Existential crisis.
Yeah, they don't understand what province they live in. It's like nobody picked them really in any sort of meaningful way. As a matter of fact, they only hung on because of a split vote. You think about 3 of those ridings, if the PCs would have only got 13 seats, it would have been one of their most significant losses in history. Glenn Savoy included, right? If any of the other parties hadn't run a candidate against Alston and Savoy, Alston would have likely won and beat Glenn Savoy, the interim leader. So it's a big, okay, what's going on here? What kind of notes are our Conservatives taking from south of the border? It does seem like the federal Conservatives have really changed their tone. They have learned to be a little bit more conciliatory.
Yes. Well, the Carney's practically what they really wish they could have.
Yes. Well, he mopped the floor with
a fever dream.
He is. Spending 2% on national defense.
Oh my God. Stop.
Major industrial projects. Oh my God.
Oh yeah. And as the days wear on, Poilievre's not going to be as beloved as.
He's already losing. He's already got some more knives out for him, I guess.
And from the New Brunswick perspective, all these PCs that were the ones, like the entire cabinet here at St. John were progressive Conservatives. They have so much rebuilding to do, and so a year to 4 years, it's going to be interesting to see how they reinvent or maybe stay the same. Who knows?
I know. I was really hoping they would have thrown a lot more curveballs by now to try to get themselves into a position where they're okay. We're going to change as a party. We're going to broaden the tent. We're going to bring in different types of people, different demographics. But you start charging $40 for participation. It's not a lot of money.
No,
but someone like me is not going to.
It's the principle. It's hard enough to get anybody involved at all. So to attempt to limit it that way, I think it's just silly. But we're just a bunch of bleeding hearts.
We're a bunch of dumb libs, according to some folks. So that's our Conservatives. That's what's going on south of the border. We covered some national stuff. We are heading into the summer.
I know.
We have a couple of interviews lined up. And one of those is with the Maritimans that I have to circle back to and line up. One of them is with Mr. Flaherty. Mr.
Flaherty from the internet, from TikTok, and also Carly Klassen, Guelph councillor.
Yep.
And there's some funny folks we met on in our travels who I think would be good to have on here. Chestermere.
Yes, Chestermere, Alberta.
Yes.
That was funny. He was very funny.
Yes.
And it's funny. My old divinity prof. Preston Pouteau was one of my professors when I was at U of T. Actually, after I transferred locally to SSU, written a few books, but he's also famous for being known as the beekeeping pastor.
Oh yes.
He and his community brought an entire movement to Chestermere, Alberta, and they got the city on the list of international bee cities, which just means it meets a high caliber of pollination, friendliness, and greenery, and neighborhood involvement, and all this stuff. So they are a bee city, and we happened to run in at the QP event in Ottawa. Mr. Counselor from Chestermere, Alberta. He knew who he was, and so I'm sure we could look him up and find him and get him on the show.
I know. I guess the latest local thing that has been sparking my interest, because I keep posting updates of Main Street here in St. John. So like St. John's struggling right now with whether or not we can transition into being a city that appreciates bike and pedestrian safety more efficiently. So that one's been on my mind as I read these comments, because it took us 4 years to get this Main Street project started, where we were just going to shrink
here
the
we
lanes
go.
down.
Municipal infrastructure. We're back, NB Poli. Municipal infrastructure. Add some bike lanes. Yep.
Redo the way that the entrances to Main Street north to south goes, because some of them, like, you'd be blasted into the 6-lane highway.
Literally.
You wouldn't have any reason to stop.
No. Some old nanny was slow on the draw and didn't get across the street in time.
Oh God! And
she's got about 200 feet to cross in 6 lanes, and the highway that goes past your city that carries the nation's highway to the United States to Maine is 4 lanes, and you got a 6-lane road from one neighborhood to another. Literally, the north end of the city, over the viaduct, which is just an overpass that goes across the highway. So we're talking less than like a kilometer. Is it a kilometer even? It's not.
I think it is just like 1.1 kilometers.
It's like barely a kilometer.
Yeah.
And it's 6 lanes, and it heads right into the core of your city. There's no need for it to be such a collector's level arterial.
Because immediately it goes right down to 4 lanes as soon as you hit the city center at St. Patrick's.
As soon as you hit St. Patrick or Union. Union becomes a 2-lane, really.
Two-lane.
Yeah.
East
6 lanes leading into a 4 and then a 2 really quickly.
So yeah. Anyway, it's causing a huge upset. Yeah. Nobody thinks anybody rides bikes or walks or anything like that. So it's been interesting.
The comment I see is, well, Halifax is tearing up their bike lanes, and these places, and what is our city all doing, putting money into this? And it's like, okay, let's be real, folks. People aren't tearing up their bike lanes.
No.
If you look at the bike lanes that existed in Halifax in 2011, or Toronto, or Vancouver, or Calgary, or Quebec City, or Montreal, or Moncton, or Fredericton even, the amount of bike lanes that are in these other cities now is hugely different. It's probably double on average. And so, yeah, there may be a road here or there where they're like, hey, we put active transportation in, but turns out it didn't get as much usage as we thought, and it makes more sense to connect it over here or rely on this other one that we have going by. So yeah, we're de-designating these lanes or whatever. And like, I know that happens, but it's a trope. It's not a real.
It's not actually real. And there's been times when they've adjusted corridors, because the idea, right, is that we look at the city from 500 feet above, and you can see how you can easily get from one place to the next with various modes of transportation. You go on my Instagram stories, you can see how to travel on Main Street North to the Uptown, how that worked before this started.
Oh yeah, right.
And you would have to cross 6 lanes to get from one sidewalk to another, or else you were walking on this tiny strip of road over an overpass. Yeah. So like, it just didn't make sense. It did not connect properly. And now not only is it going to connect properly, you're going to have the ability to make sure that you're crossing safely at the places where cars are at an intersection.
Yeah. And cars have reduced lanes.
Yeah.
So we know,
slows down.
The people are like, oh, the bike lobby. No, this is about safety.
Yeah.
Right. It's about safety.
And the safety lobby, I'd say, is one of the loudest in the city, because there are so many people who are like, recognizing dangerous places in St. John, and like, we don't live everywhere, so it's helpful. We have a list. What is the list? Like 200
and some requests for traffic calming and lane reductions. people losing their mind about the word road diet. There are people who are connecting it to the 15-minute city conspiracies, the World Economic Forum takeover, going to prison you inside with open air prisons. Like, these people are out there, folks, and they believe this stuff. And it's like, we don't hear from them until all of a sudden we do something to improve something. And then all of a sudden it's baked in a conspiracy. Like, we're here to destroy the land or the way of life. And it's like, oh man, it's tough, because you're like, okay, well, we've been talking about doing something on Main Street for literally a decade.
So for folks to show up when it's actually starting to
hour.
be ripped up, and there's new curbs going in and stuff like that, it speaks to like engagement, I think, and back to the PC thing about paying $40. It's like, if you can even get someone to know that the leadership race is happening and get them to show up, like, oh my God, amazing.
And this is, so it goes to the democracy question that Gavin Newsom said in the Daily podcast. If you don't listen to the Daily, recommend it for sure. We got to show our sources. We got to show our work here. This is where places we listen to get this information. But like, him on there talking about how quick we can lose this type of system and this democracy. Him going down the list of citing things that are just crazy that are happening in California right now. Orders, how the military is being utilized by ICE, and how, it's only ever happened one time in history where the National Guard have been mobilized like this by a president against the governor's wishes. It's the governor's own National Guard, right? Like, it's all kinds of bizarre federal overreach.
Talk about like provincial, federal stuff here, like crazier in the
state
US.
level, and states have a lot more power than the provinces do. And man, it's just like, that is
what's his thought on democracy though?
But the democracy piece, it's, people don't pay attention. They don't know what's going on. There's all these issues that are all political. Like, we've talked about it.
Potholes are political.
And then people, they don't tune in, and then they hear a few things, a few rumors. They see a couple of Loyalist City newspaper posts, or whoever in your local town, the news chatter sites.
Chasers and chatters.
And then they're like, see, it's the government. And then you go down this road of like not talking to the government, not asking the government, and assuming a bunch about the government. And then it becomes a conversation that
expecting like a tag on Facebook is going to be like how your activism works. And also just like yelling and screaming that this is wrong and there's no other solution. And I think you had an exchange with someone who said, we need to throw everybody out. Like, toss this whole council out. And it's I like your response, like, okay, then who, number one, and two, what's your plan? What are you gonna do?
Who do you want differently? And what plans do you wish they'd have made differently? And it's crickets.
Please, like,
it's crickets.
You don't like some vote that I did, or you don't like some decision I made, or whatever. That's fine.
I'm still your elected official. You still have an obligation to talk to me. It's like, I don't have an obligation. I'm not resourced to talk to you. Like, this is the best we can do as far as councillors to talk. Like, we go way further than any other councillor in this province to capture what we think about things, and to have dialogue, and have guests, and to put ideas on the table. And
it scares me how much lives on the internet of me and you, and how we said things, and it's, if there's something I said that someone didn't like or wanted to hold me accountable for, like, that has happened. And so I think that's why I'm glad this all lives somewhere, even though I know it's not received by the masses.
It's definitely not received by the masses. You, 200 folks of you out there that support us and listen, and maybe it's more. Like, we've been surprised by the Rogers
for caring, because like I say, like, it's very difficult to get people to thoughtfully think through, like, how did Main Street come to be? Why did we decide to do that? And it's like, there's such a long story as to why that is. And there was multiple checks and balances. There was all kinds of partners involved. There was province, there was highway corporations, all these things. So like, it's not like one day we were like, fire up the asphalt machine.
You want 2 lanes? I'll give you 6, pal. That was the 1970s St. John Council, basically.
Absolutely.
Urban renewal, take all the properties that were there, the shanty town, they called it, and tear it down.
So they wanted to get rid of the poor.
It was class warfare.
Yeah, it really was. They drew a line, like, between the poor folks in St. John and the rich folks in St. John.
And the north end of the city has never been the same, right? No. Like, it used to be a young, aspiring professionals, and
Artsy,
doctors, and
yeah,
artsy.
yeah.
And the uptown used to be a little more of the commercial sector and the.
People talk like I lived on Clarendon Street, which is right by Douglas Avenue, and had folks in the neighborhood telling me that, oh yeah, I used to live there with like all my roommates from university, or we had a little artist studio and it was really cheap. And then you worked on a place there years like in the 2020s.
Oh yeah,
and
Victoria
the rent
Street.
was or Clarendon Street.
Oh, Clarendon. Yeah.
It wasn't the rent like in the
Oh
2000s?
yes, no, the one we rehabbed from the dead. Yeah, Seabass's team. And
but that neighborhood was getting
absolutely
gentrified,
yeah.
So it was left behind for a long time, and now you're working on another house.
Oh yeah,
Victoria Street.
Been on Victoria since 2019. I've got Carol's job done.
Yeah.
Got Matt Doherty's job I'm doing now.
So this is going to connect everybody in there with everybody uptown. And
yeah,
there is going to be gentrification problems actually, because you will start to see now that it's more connected that there'll be
unless the province wants to step up or the city wants to step up and build an entity that quarterbacks development and buys up property and resists that gentrification by active engagement and active pushback against the market forces that will want to build there. Because we've always said, like, St. John, I know this is getting municipally heavy on St. John, but like the core of St. John is the fastest growing urban core of almost any city in Canada. Yes. It has grown at rates of like 11-12%. Now you have to kind of separate the rest of the aggregate and narrow it in right on the uptown core of the city to get that number. But it's been done, and they have demonstrated multiple times, multiple years in a row. And so it's like, of course, the North End is the most adjacent area to that could handle any sort of development, because uptown. So it's going to gentrify. But if you had a force that was interested in inserting itself, buying up some property, safeguarding affordability.
But we're seeing it close in, like Milledgeville's doing really, really well. There's tons going on there.
Yeah.
There's lots going on in town. It's going to, this new thing, like the city will take a turn. And I think we're just probably going to hear more about it online as it continues, really, because it's not going to be the St. John that you knew 10 years ago.
Well, it's definitely not the Moncton anybody knew 10 years ago.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Moncton, if you think we've got it hard, Moncton is kind of, their growth rate is exponential.
I was just up there. Level. It's like in the Riverview for a soccer tournament, and it just everywhere you look, there's businesses that you didn't know existed.
Yeah.
And like it'd be, Buddy with his mulch landscaping place or a concrete place, or holy frig, they have every single Mack truck that you need to buy if you're heading on through.
Well, their industrial park has become the sales hub for all these like heavy machinery salespeople for the Maritimes and boats and RVs and like their industrial park is highly commercial and highly sales based. Ours is more industrial based, right?
We're not talking about that today. There's no such thing as an industrial park. But yes, it is a lot going on in St. John right now. If anyone's paying attention to our city council, I think we've had we haven't really talked about council in so long, so I apologize for. We've had council almost every week for the last 8-9 weeks.
Yeah, I missed growth committee today. I was up on staging. I was like, John, I cannot come. I am so far behind this. I cannot be at this committee meeting. And it was about the municipal housing entity. And I feel terrible for not being able to be there, but I'm so far behind this job. We've talked about it before. Trying to be a working class individual, and we go to council when they have day meetings for these committees. And sometimes you're just like, okay, I can go and listen to this consultant's report, or I can stay here and scrape cedar shingles and replace them and paint them and get paid 2 days quicker or a day quicker, and that matters more than anything else. And that's really where I was.
I think that's where we are at. Like it's as on maternity leave for not very much longer, and just like trying to figure out how you do this job as parents and people who still have to work and aren't retired and don't have pensions.
Oh my gosh!
Because there's quite a few people on council that have pensions, and I mean, I hate that's probably a barrier to many people, honestly.
Oh my God, of course it is.
Yeah. Right. I think that the reason that we were able to get into it in the first place is because I was an entrepreneur.
So was I.
And you were an entrepreneur. So
we're like, I don't know, add something to the plate. We'll figure it out. Sure.
And at least I make my own schedule. So that is but that's also crazy, and it led to. I mean, I was talking about this how we should have a tell-all podcast someday about everything, but like I lost a business and had to go bankrupt and all these things during my council term, and had a baby. So it's like life happens to you when you're this age.
It's called the trenches, pal.
It's called the trenches.
And most of the counselors we talk to are not in them.
No, except like you meet some folks from across the country who are in more similar situations.
Yeah, a few. You get a few.
But mostly,
most of them are more compensated than we are.
Yeah,
in their trenches.
Just got just passed not too long ago that we may be able to get benefits.
May be able to.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about it yet. So it was a motion of council. There are some motions that councillors have put in that have passed unanimously that are still nowhere to be found. We have a few of those. And it's like you can't rush your staff unless you put a timeline on it, unless you say it's got to be done by here, or else we want weekly updates about what progress exactly was made. Like you really have to have oversight on your staff when you pass a motion. You can't leave it to their devices, and you can't leave it to their good intentions because they got so much going on. Under-resourced, understaffed. They'll, some of it. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's not. It's really hard to tell the difference.
We're just over here as governors of this particular organization.
Yeah.
That serves a ton of people. That serves everybody who lives here. So it's like you only have a small team really who is responsible for almost 80,000 people, and
pretty much
it's interesting.
80,000.
You're seeing you get all the inside scoop here on the MB.
Right on the MB Poli pod, folks. So we got to get some interviews lined up. That's going to be happening. But I think it's worth saying in our last few minutes here, we're probably going to go down to a more haphazard schedule.
Yeah.
For the summer.
Absolutely.
We always do. We usually take the summer off.
But as people funnel in, we'll make sure to broadcast those interviews.
Yeah.
And but we wanted to see how this format worked. Let us know. Does it look nicer on Rogers TV versus the old webcam camera from Brent's laptop?
Can you hear me any better?
Are we okay now, Fred?
Yeah, Fred. All right, folks. Well, signing off. Another week, another batch of news stories. Not sure if we'll see you next week. It just depends on some of our timelines.
Brent's up on the staging, and he's got to concentrate. So
can't podcast from this.
Can't podcast from this.
I gotta have harness on, and then the harness rubs your mic, and it's bad audio quality.
And I'm not bringing Beatrix up on staging.
Oh, that's a shame. She would learn a lot. Anyway, so we might see you next week. We're gonna go down to a bi-weekly schedule. I'll call that.
Okay.
Bi-weekly schedule, so for sure the week after next. But if we get a guest sooner than thought, we will pump those as we get them. And there's a lot of good topics in those. So
agreed.
Anyway.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. Cheers.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Smudging is a very important part in our life as we're all learning to walk the good way. When we smudge, we use the sacred medicine, the white sage, the sweetgrass, the tobacco, and the cedar. It cleanses negative energy and replaces it by a positive energy. When I smudge, I cleanse my end and my eagle feather and start cleansing my breath to have better words. I will smudge my eyes so I could see the better things offered to me. I will smudge my ears to hear the good thing that people have to say. I will smudge my hair to have good thinking from my head. I will bring the smudge to my feet so I could walk in respect with our Mother, the Earth. Smudging is the way we give our prayers to connect our spirit to the Creator. We express gratitude for the gift of life, the learning, and growth.
Support your local charities and win great prizes by playing bingo on Rogers TV.
This is Rogers TV.
With clubs, leagues, and courts in every province and territory across Canada, squash is the sport for